Each season, Guys Telling Stories seeks out fascinating people with a good story to tell. I'm Bill Easton. The man next to me is Rich Douglas. We're just a couple of guys who love a good story. Join us on our quest to find fascinating people who have a good story to tell. This is Guys Telling Stories.
Welcome to Guys Telling Stories. Great to be back with you, Bill.
How are we doing, Rich?
I'm excited. I got a little travel trip I wanted to tell you about.
Okay.
I'm biking to Key West.
From Buffalo? That's a long bike ride.
That's a good question. Well, before I tell you about it, we got some amazing guests today. Jerry and Ken Goldman, they're owners and founders of a company called Pedal Across Wisconsin.
Well, so you're going from Wisconsin to Key West.
No, see, try to follow me here. This is a bike vacation and tour company, and they do rides on the East Coast, the West Coast, and everywhere in between, including the Florida Keys.
That's awesome. I would love to go down there again.
Yeah.
So, Rich, what's the deal with biking in Key West?
Well, I know it's funny that to take a trip, from New York down to Florida and ride a bike doesn't seem like something like everybody likes to do. But once a year, as you know, I take a vacation bike trip.
Yes, you go from Buffalo to New York City.
Yep.
You go from Buffalo to Pittsburgh. And this year you're not. You're going...
Yeah, we're going a little different, actually. So the past couple of years, we've been doing it for 3 years. We did Buffalo to New York City.
Yeah.
And that was an adventure.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother story. But you actually helped us out a few years ago. You drove us to Pittsburgh.
That was fun. That's right. We didn't bike to Pittsburgh.
No, you drove us. There's a trail that connects Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. Yeah. And so did that one. And a coworker of mine told me that you can cross 42 bridges. It's about 100 miles, so it's not even that far, and go from the mainland, like Key Largo in Florida, down to Key West.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's something that gives me such a sense of like freedom and adventure. And
42 bridges.
42 bridges.
So you're just like looking at nothing but water.
You're just like...
That's relaxing.
In paradise going, wow,
yeah, that's
this
cool.
is cool.
Warm weather.
Mm-hmm.
Breezes, sunshine.
Probably hot weather, to be honest. But like I said, it's not too far. And, growing up, I always rode my bike, and I would be riding to the playground or to go play basketball. So this annual trip is one, with the sun on the way, I'm looking to kind of keep it going so that maybe, 1 year I could kind of take an adventure and do something like this with him. But, it's not easy. It's not easy to bike 40 or 50 miles a day, even if you like doing it, and you need to be in shape. And with a trip like this, you got to plan a safe route. You got to figure out where you want to stay. What are you going to eat? When are you going to eat? And with travel in general, it's always pretty difficult, but, planning a trip where you're going from the mainland down to the Keys, I basically am saying I don't know what I'm doing.
So we're talking to two guys from Wisconsin today who are going to teach you how to bike from Wisconsin to Key West.
Not quite. That's funny. No. So Jerry and Ken Goldman, they hold an annual trip from Key Largo to Key West. They've done this a handful of times. They are the experts in it. And these are serious bike people. They not only do that Keys ride, but they have, I think, 7 annual tours. And they take people from the West Coast, and they do a whole ride over there in Wisconsin where it's nice and flat. They do a ride, and they do one down in Florida. So I figured what we would do is let's talk to them. Let's hear about their company, Pedal Across Wisconsin, and ask them what a bike vacation and tour company looks like, and maybe hope to ask them about Key West along the way too, because all in all, it's a pretty unique business they have, and they've been doing it for decades.
And you're going there.
Yeah, and so, in the next couple of months, once we get this thing all planned out, I'll be on my way.
That's awesome.
And Jerry and Ken have done it, so what do you say? Want to give them a call?
Yes, do it.
All right, let's talk to them. Jerry and Ken, welcome to the show.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
We're doing great. For the audience, this is one of our first dual interviews where you got the two hosts, and then we're talking to a couple people on the back end.
This is our first.
Is it?
Not live.
Yeah, not
where they're
face.
sitting next to us.
Yeah.
So
the audience knows, why don't you guys introduce yourself, and when you do so, just tell everybody where they can go to find out a little bit more about you and the company.
Okay, I'm Ken with Pedal Across Wisconsin, and we have my dad, Jerry, who founded this excellent organization back in 1985, and his wife, Janice, and the three of us make up Pedal Across Wisconsin, and pedalacrosswisconsin.com is where you can find all of our tours. We have the Florida Keys tour in December, and we have the San Juan Islands tour in Washington State in August.
Jerry, do you go by Dr. J? Did I see that on the website?
Well, a lot of people know me as Dr. J, Dr. J Pedal. Okay, and that's my email, and that's where you can send to me, Dr. J Pedal at sbcglobal.net. It's in the upper right-hand corner of our website.
Well, Jerry, if you wouldn't mind, the audience knows that I'm planning this bike trip down to the Florida Keys, and I was wondering, we talked a little bit off mic, what was your first bike tour across the Florida Keys?
Well, my first bike tour down there was with friends about 20 years ago, and at that time, the bike path wasn't nearly finished to the extent it is now. And so we shuttled over a lot of busy highway for that trip. But we did go all the way from Key Largo to Key West. And since then, the bike path has not been completed to the point that it replaces the entire 100 miles of road, but a good percentage of it. So we held off having a tour there a good 10 or 15 years until a few years ago when the path became complete to the point where all that was left was the bridges, which will always remain shoulder riding, and just a few short sections of US 1, which is quite busy, but they did put signage up and smooth over the shoulder for the bike path.
So I guess I'll ask Ken. Ken, what was it about Key West that made you want to expand your tours?
Well, a lot of riders, longtime riders of ours, wanted to go somewhere in winter. Obviously, Wisconsin's a terrible place for cycling in winter. And so we headed down to Florida to try and come up with something. And actually, we went to Sarasota and tried to get a ride going there, but it's not biker friendly. So we packed it up there, and since we came that far, we just went down to the Keys and searched out the route there. And this will be our 5th year of doing the Keys tour, and people seem to like it. It's sold out every year, about 125 riders. And, people keep asking us if we're going to do one in February or March because they like it so much. But we're just going to stick with the one in December. It's a nice time of year to be there because it's technically off-peak tour season. So there's less traffic, less lines at the attractions in Key West, and just a nicer time to be there for a bicycle tour.
Now, the Keys are a special place because for people like myself who haven't been down there yet, it's just this chain of islands that goes on for about 100 miles. So I was wondering if we could hear the history of Key West. I know you guys do these rides. Who typically tells that story?
We have a historian with us.
Yes.
Oh, yeah? Who's that?
Well, I'm Janice, and so I it's not so much the history of Key West, but it's the history of the entire route that goes from Key Largo to Key West. And it's basically we have a man named Henry Flagler to thank for it. And I was just brushing up on the internet. Do you want me to go into the story of how Henry Flagler, what he has to do with our bike tour?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. And Janice, just so everybody knows, you are one of the organizers for all these tours. And
Yes, I'm on crew. I'm Jerry's wife. And I've been riding, with Jerry since 1990. And, once we became a couple and I retired, now I'm full time.
That's great.
It's fun.
She got promoted.
I got it from
Well, yeah, if you're the historian of the group, what makes the Keys so special? What's the history behind connecting them?
Well, the Keys, first of all, Key West is a beautiful and a unique city. And the Keys, they're really undescribable because there's water everywhere. In other words, at some point, there's one bridge in particular, 7 Mile Bridge. You are on open water for 7 miles, which is, it's just a really unique place. I had not been there before we did these rides, but I really like all the Keys, and Key West in particular is very unique. There's a lot of history down there. There's an Ernest Hemingway house that we've toured. President Truman had something called the Little White House that he used to use extensively when he was president in the 50s. And there's just a lot of rich history. The Key West was the biggest city in Florida at the turn of the 20th century. It was huge, but it was only available. you could only get there by boat. So a man named Henry Flagler, this is in the late 1880s, he and John D. Rockefeller founded Standard Oil. So he and John D. Rockefeller were fabulously wealthy, and Henry Flagler the train only went to Jacksonville, Florida in the 1880s, and he and his wife liked St. Augustine, which was about, a little bit further down, but there was not much down there as a place to stay. So he decided with his money to run the railroad from Jacksonville to St. Augustine and to build a fabulous 500-room hotel, which is still in St. Augustine. And then he built a second hotel, and that is now called Flagler College. And once he started, and he wanted to encourage tourism, of course, and people from the East Coast to come and winter down there. Then he decided to buy up either local railroads or build them himself, and he moved the railroad all the way down to Palm Beach. And again, he built a huge hotel, and he also built, by then I think he was married to his third wife, and as a present to her, he built a 56-room summer cottage, which is also in Palm Beach. It's now called Flagler Museum.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, what a nice gift.
Yeah, they gave her $1 million in jewelry, too. So, this was back the robber barons where there was unlimited money. Rockefeller was running the business, and Flagler was spending it in Florida. And he got to Palm Beach, and at the time, Miami was really kind of just a mosquito-infested swamp. Not much was happening in Miami. And they were begging him, say, please bring a railroad down here. We really need some help. So he, at great expense, ran it to Miami, built the first water and sewer systems, put the roads in Miami, opened a newspaper, and they were very grateful that, finally Miami was on the map. So that was around the turn of the century. And then he was eyeing Key West because, like I said, it was the biggest city in Florida, and the Panama Canal was being built. And so Flagler, as a businessman, knew that there was going to be a lot of commerce coming around the Panama Canal and toward Key West. So at huge expense, and a lot of people died during this, he ran the railroad over all these islands and eventually connected it in 1912. And by then he was about 82 years old, and he took the first train down. So that legacy, that roadbed that we ride on, the road, Highway 1, was the train line. But unfortunately, he died a year later. The train never really made money as a commercial venture. And in 1935, the biggest hurricane ever to hit the Keys crossed over and destroyed the railroad. And so that was the end of that. And then the state of Florida, that was the Depression, bought the rights from the defunct railroad, and then it became a road. So the highway that you ride on and where the bikers are going is the legacy of Henry Flagler. And when you get to the water, you can still see the bridges that were built. They're still standing because it's pretty shallow, the water right there. The main street in Key West is called Flagler Avenue. There's a museum down there that extensively talks about it, and the train station's still there. So Henry Flagler really opened up the entire east coast of Florida, but in particular, he was the one that really got people down to the Keys.
It's amazing.
And then it became the road.
Can you imagine trying to build a railroad today? Like, I'm just going to build a railroad from here to somewhere, all the red tape and government.
Yeah. I always used to wonder growing up, like, how do you cut through neighborhoods? But when you're connecting islands, you're cutting through water. Yeah. I can't imagine doing that at the start of the 1900s, let alone even right now.
No. The fact that he obviously hired the best engineers at the time, it cost a tremendous amount of money, but he had enough money and the wherewithal. He got that railroad all the way down to Key West in 1912. And like I said, it didn't really ever do what he expected it to do. And then the hurricane came, and that was the end of that.
Speaking of hurricanes, the last hurricane that was just down there, Hurricane Irma, I'm sure that did some damage to your trail and to your route. Can you kind of describe what that was like?
Well, Ken and Jerry can speak more of that, but they did fly to Miami the end of October for just that reason, to check out exactly what was the state of the bike trail. And Ken said to me, I talked to him, I said, so what's it look like? They were in Key Largo, which is at the West End, and he said, we only had to drive about 5 miles before we made a decision. There was no way you could run a bike ride down there early December. There was a debris piled 20, 30 feet high. Some of it was on the bike path. The bike path had been destroyed further down, getting closer to Key West when the hurricane crossed. And the place was full. I said, "Oh, are there any people in the hotel?" He said, "Yeah, they're all workers. There were tons of people working to clean it up, and they're still cleaning it up." And if you want to speak more to that, but so we canceled the trip. There was no way.
Yeah, Ken, what did you have to tell people? I mean, I'm sure they trust you from years of experience, but it's kind of heartbreaking and disappointing when you have to cancel something like that. So, so what'd you say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a bucket list trip for a lot of people, but most of those people, they're going to come back next year and do it again. So, or do for the first time with us. So, we just try to let people know as soon as possible so they could cancel their flights if they could and make other plans. There's nothing you can really do about it. There's no other way to go. There's only one route, and when that's blocked up, that's it. The tour's over. So,
well, people thanked us for it in general, and a few people called attention to the fact that there was another camping tour going on at just almost the same time, just a few weeks before ours, and they chose to do the ride. We chose not to. We gave everyone a 100% refund. We kept nothing for expense, and we told people that if they want to come back next year, we'll honor this year's price, even though we expect an increase from restaurants and hotels. So just a few seconds of beating our own drum, so to speak. We're pretty satisfied with what we did.
Well, it's hospitality like that, Jerry, that have you guys doing this for the past, few decades. I mean, they're not coming back unless you're treating them right. So I give you a tip of the hat to you for that.
Well, I think this is going to be our 34th season, and people who have been with us more than even one or two seasons know that that's how we operate. And actually, we have people who are coming this season who were with us the first year 34 years ago in 1985.
That's what I was going to ask you next. Like, how many people have done almost every year?
Mm-hmm.
So, we're proceeding at somewhere around 65% return riders who are not one and done but come back. And 65 might not sound like a lot, but in biking that's huge because you get so many people who just want to try riding once. A lot of couples, let's do something together type, and they choose biking, but they shouldn't have really come on the tour. They're not real riders. Some make it, some don't.
Yeah.
And then you've got a lot of people who make it a point never to do the same ride twice. They want to ride in every state in the country. They want to ride in every country on the globe. So when you get up to somewhere between 60 and 70% on a bike tour of people who are willing to come back many times, you're doing okay.
Quick break to talk about podcastyourstory.com. Sometimes life's best moments seem to just pass by too quickly. So why not record those moments and have the audio become a podcast for you to share? From that first bike ride down to the Florida Keys, to that time you fell off your bike and skinned your knees. I can't believe that, Ryan.
I can't believe I sit here and don't laugh every time you do this.
Well, as you know, the professionals at podcastyourstory.com record an audio interview of you telling your story. So, what's your story? Well, tell the people at podcastyourstory.com, and the final product can be an audio interview you share with family, friends, or the world. And our listeners get 20% off your first recording. Just mention promo code GTS. That's 20% off your first recording with podcastyourstory.com by mentioning promo code GTS. And now, back to our interview with Jerry and Ken. Well, you definitely offer other tours besides Key West, so let's get right into it. The name of the company is Pedal Across Wisconsin, and either Ken or Jerry, whoever wants to take it, how did the company get started? What's the story behind that?
It was about 1983, and I belonged to one of the big bike clubs in the Chicago area. And they sent out a note in their newsletter that they were going to go to Wisconsin and bike for a few days. And if you're interested, call this number. So I called, and the guy says to me, well, nothing's been decided yet. We're waiting to see how many people respond. Next year, same thing happened. And I called again. He said, we're waiting to see if people will respond. And I said, look, all people want to know is when is this going to happen? Where are we going to ride? Where are we going to eat and sleep? And how many miles a day? And at that point, I told the club it didn't seem like they wanted to do it or couldn't get it together. I would do it myself. And if it made a few dollars, I told them I'm going to keep it. And if it loses, I'll pay for it.
Well, you make it sound easy. Like all we need to know is how far we're going to go and where we're staying and where we're eating and when is it.
Well, that's the basics of it.
Yeah.
Really.
So for someone to take 2 years to try to get that established, I get the frustration. And I've been down that road before in business, and I'm just going to do it myself.
That's how we got started. And we didn't advertise much. We still don't. It's been mostly word of mouth and our website, and it's just become a family thing that grew into a so-called business.
Yeah. Ken, when things are expanding and growing, I think that's where maybe kind of you came into play. Can you talk a little bit about the expansion and growth of the company from where maybe your dad started it to where it is today?
He made me do it. He's keeping me hostage at this. I'm trying to get out my whole life. After 35 years, I'm still just a water boy. But about 5-6 years ago, we had about 1 week long tour.
We had 1 week long and 4 weekends.
And the weekends at that time were actually the attendance was starting to go down because back in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't a whole lot of competition. And nowadays, you go on the internet, and every bike club and every charity has a weekend tour. So it just seemed natural that the week-long tour was the way to go, And then, my dad had a lot of ideas, places that he had ridden in the past, like the San Juan Islands in Washington State, where, okay, well, let's go check it out. Maybe it could be a PAW ride. And, so we have a lot of ideas. And now we have, 5 week-long tours, 2 of which we run twice, so 7 total tours.
One thing we were wondering about, guys, was if it's all been just sunshine and roses, or if you've had some ups and some downs. So again, Jerry or Ken, whoever wants to take it, do you guys have a struggle story that comes to mind from one of these rides where you maybe had to think on your feet or just sort of overcome?
Well, there was a critical point in the San Juan Islands tour.
I blocked that out of my mind. Yeah. Well, last year, we had to cut one of our tours a day short because the ferry service decided to not run on the last day of the tour. And, things like that will happen when you run tours.
Well, that was a pretty quick shift of gears while we were sitting on Lopez Island at the ferry dock. And Ken opens his email and gets this notice from San Juan Island Ferry that the day we're going back from Victoria, British Columbia, the ferry will be closed. There won't be any boat. So in about 15 minutes' time, Ken got on his phone, made reservations for the day before for all the vehicles and hotel back in Anacortes for everyone. And again, we footed the bill for the extra night, the duplicate night back in Anacortes for everyone. And they pretty well understood that the only way we could do it was the way we did it. We had to go back a day early because if we went back a day late, there'd be a long list of flights having been missed. And so everybody was pretty pleased with that. And we're very fortunate. When we adjust to emergencies, riders have always adjusted with us.
We're currently working on securing our own ferry for that tour.
There you go.
Yeah.
Rockefeller has nothing on PAW.
Yeah. Well, maybe a fleet of canoes.
Oh, that would be fun. That'd be a fun adventure there. Yeah.
Well, there is a lot of kayaking out there.
What kind of tours are you making new tours and developing new tours? And if so, what tours are you looking forward to doing next?
Well, we'd like very, very much to find some place between November and March where it's warm. And we're not sure where that is yet. We're just not sure what would meet our standards because our riders have been so accustomed to the Wisconsin roads with such low traffic. And, everybody asks how they got that. It was because of the dairy industry decades ago, and they would not pick up the milk at the farms unless the county and the state paved the roads. So we're left with a back road networks of not state roads, not even county roads, but township roads that go anywhere from 1 to 3 miles and then hit an intersection, like a T intersection, and they end. So we just cross over to the next and do it. On some of those roads, there's no cars at all. The county roads, there's light traffic, and we don't use much in the way of a state road ever. So we feel that we've got a standard to meet, and it's hard in many states. And if you look at the number of bike paths across the South compared to the northern states, it's entirely out of balance. The bike, with all due respect to my southern friends, and they will agree with me, it's for the most part not the same as up north. So we've got a kind of a problem finding where to ride down there. People tell us places like Arizona, and most of that is, if it's not off-road, it's wide shoulder riding, fairly busy road, and so we're hesitant to make that our style.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it sounds like some of the fun can be in that research, going down there and checking out the roads and scouting them. And I'm sure you guys will find something that's suitable. And if you don't, you just keep on researching. That's part of the fun.
Great excuse to say I need to go to Hawaii to scout routes in February.
Exactly. You got it. Guys, as we sort of close this thing out, if you had to suggest to somebody who was riding for the first time, any advice to get themselves prepared, or maybe just what to expect, what advice would you give to anybody thinking about doing a bike tour?
People ask me that all the time, and my answer never changes. You got to ride for the enjoyment. I never trained for anything in my life, okay? And hopefully I'm going to do the birthday ride this year, which is a mile for every year on Earth. And that's going to be a really long ride, okay? But I got that way for riding just for the fun of it. If you like riding and your heart is in it, you will go out and you will start to pile up the miles just almost automatically. Just a few little tips are involved, such as getting a bike that's like a road bike that doesn't weigh a ton. Go to a bike shop and get fit properly and get a real bike. Be ready to spend anywhere from $800 to $1,400. Don't go in a shop and buy the cheapest $200 or $300 bike there. And the argument against that is always, well, I don't ride a lot. I don't want to spend a lot. And I say, well, okay, if you don't spend a lot, you're not going to ride a lot either, because that $300 bike is going to be a ton of work and you won't like it. Other than that, learn how to use your gears and get off the bike path and get on a road where there's going to be a few easy type hills, and learn to use your gears to the point you can go up without feeling challenged. But the most important thing is to ride because you like it. And when you start getting up in miles, don't think of a 60-mile ride as a 60-mile ride. Think of it as 3 20-mile rides. Ride 15 or 20 and stop for a snack and get to the 30-mile mark and have lunch, and get to the 45-mile mark and have ice cream, and finish and have ice cream again.
A lot of ice cream in your guys' tours, I've noticed.
That's great advice. Well, guys, this has been great. I think we gave people a really good insight into what you're doing and what one of the tours might look like. But if they want to find out some more information, where's the best place to send them again?
www.pedalacrosswisconsin.com. Okay, from there you can see all of our tours. The Florida Keys Tour, which is FloridaKeysBikeRide.com, and the San Juan Islands Bike Tour.com. But pedallacrosswisconsin.com will have everything you need.
That sounds great.
Yeah, that'll get you to where you need to go. Well, if Janice, if you could still hear us, thank you so much for the history. And Jerry and Ken, thanks again for everything. Thanks for doing the show.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
They're fun.
Yeah, man. They are the guys I'd probably like to take a bike tour with. Think about that. They've done it so many times, and there's ice cream.
There's apparently ice cream.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's funny. They've been doing it since 1985.
It was, they obviously enjoy what they're doing, and they're very passionate about it. I haven't seen a picture of them. It's kind of neat. Most of the times we talk to people, and I know who we're talking to. So when you don't know who they are and you just hear their voice, you kind of get this picture of what they look like. So
yeah,
I'm curious.
Curious to see the pic? Yeah.
No, I'm curious.
Well, Jerry's been doing this for so long. He's actually in his 80s.
He's a doctor.
Dr. J. What a cool nickname. I wanted to ask him how he got it, but I get it. Dr. J. Pedal. And those guys sound like they've been doing this. And if you're looking for an adventure, that's one heck of a vacation.
Yeah, no kidding.
We always like traveling, Bill. Sitting on a cruise ship, sipping a pina colada sounds pretty good to me. But every once in a while, hopping on a bike.
Sure.
Riding around.
I'm going to get one of those cars so you can pull me.
What do you mean, like a sidecar?
Yeah.
You know what you should try is one of those e-bikes. Yeah. Have you see what I'm talking about?
Nope.
Regular bike, you're sitting on it, except it has a little electronic ignition, and it propels you. You can go 15, 20 miles.
I doubt I could do one of these tours on that. I think everyone would just look at me funny, and I wouldn't be included. Like they'll all do shots at one side of the bar, and I won't have one because they're not. The e-bike guy doesn't get one.
He's not pedaling. He's eating all the ice cream. We're not doing shots with him. Everyone else is having a happy hour at the end. You're having an unhappy hour. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, this is in the cards for me. Could you see yourself doing one?
I would like to think I would do it. I just don't know if I have a bike now. So.
Well, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to come down to Key West.
I could try.
Maybe you bring the bike to Key West or just rent one. And even if you don't take the whole ride, just kind of ride around the island.
It's Key
with
West.
us.
Why not?
Yeah, it's very bike friendly.
Yeah.
Well, this trip is in the next couple of months, and we'll have the baby then, Bill.
Yeah, take
He's
pictures.
Basically here, in the next couple of weeks, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
But I've never gone on a trip with a baby. That's a whole new frontier.
Oh, I want to go just to see this.
Well, you can come, and you can. We'll get one of those sidecars for the little guy.
There you go, and then one for him too.
Absolutely. Well, guys, if you like what you heard or you had any comments or questions, you can hit us up on Facebook or connect with us on Twitter, and let us know what you think.
42 bridges.
42 bridges, 100 miles.
One of them 7 miles long.
Yeah, I heard that.
Did he say that right?
7 mile. Yeah, it's a pretty famous bridge.
Wow.
Yeah. Don't worry, we'll take pictures, and if you want to follow me when I'm doing that, I'll make sure it's on the Guys Telling Stories.
I'll give you my
Instagram.
I'll give you my GoPro.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
You heard it here first. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We're kind of winding the season down, Bill, but
It's almost over.
yeah, we still got a couple good episodes left in us. Well, hopefully we can make our way on the bus for season finale. We'll see if that's in the cards.
Yes.
I know. We'll be excited and looking forward to the last couple episodes. So, guys, hit us up, like I said. And as always, I'm Rich Douglas.
I'm Bill Easton.
Till next time.